Hello and welcome to the Daily Journal's analysis of the House District 17 Educational Forum that took place last night at the Lee County Library. I'm joined here today with Chris Kiefer, Managing Editor of Multimedia and In-Depth Reporting, as well as Emma Crawford, our education reporter here at the Daily Journal. We're going to take just a few minutes here and talk about some of the issues that were discussed last night at the forum. Obviously a big crowd yesterday at the library. Chris Kiefer was moderating the forum last night and kept the candidates on track to his best ability, but was really good experience to see those candidates out and about talking about the issues. From your perspective, what did you enjoy seeing and hearing last night, not only from the candidates, but the questions that were asked as well?
Yeah, like you said, I think having a crowd, having them there, we were talking about earlier off air, the fact that, education, the importance of education, but also it's at least have the perception of being more in the wheelhouse of the Democratic candidates, and at least here or people that are, some of the issues and where they line up. And so I thought for all four candidates to agree to participate and both parties to all come and discuss the issues, I thought it was a good discussion. And then there were some issues that really went across party lines. I mean, one of the ones that stood out was early childhood education. And there's been a fight for years by advocates of early childhood education to get attention for that. That momentum's starting to grow, but the amount of state funding is still very light. And for all four candidates to talk about the importance of early childhood education and to all be advocates for expanding it, I'm sure had those advocates of early childhood education excited.
Right. Just a reminder, last night we had candidates, Democrats Jim Newman, Charles Penson, as well as Republicans Shana Gary and Mark Prince, all at the table answering questions at a forum that was put on by the NAACP, as well as which other organizations?
Parish Public Schools and the Tupelo Ministerial Association are three sponsors.
And Emma, you were there covering the event for the Journal and obviously saw and listened to all the questions that were asked. What in your mind stood out last night at the forum as far as questions that were asked or topics that were discussed?
Well, kind of like what Chris just said, the early childhood education thing is, I thought was really interesting. And especially, in light of, I wrote a story, a couple weeks ago about how Mississippi ranked 50th again in the Kids Count data report. And one of the big suggestions was a focus on early childhood education in pre-K. So to see, the candidates discussing that and to be in favor of it and to acknowledge that this is an important thing for our kids, and then that was pretty good to see.
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, these candidates are going to be running in the August 4th primary election, so you'll have Republicans versus Democrats, and then each of those candidates will face off squarely in a battle in November in the general election. Just to go over quickly some of the questions that were asked, the topics range from everything from full funding MAEP to early childhood education, like Chris mentioned, to vouchers in private schools. So again, we really covered the full gamut of topics as far as education in Mississippi goes. Was there any one particular answer or topic that, again, just really sort of hit the nail on the head last night to you, Chris?
I'm trying to think in terms of answering that question directly, but one topic that we talked about, they were all kind of in the same line in terms of early childhood education. One topic that kind of broke along party lines was the privatization and the question of funding. The two Republicans both kind of made a point that things are good here, they're not needed here, they're not needed in Tupelo, you've got to look statewide. Both of them talked specifically about Tunica and the state recently taking over the school district there, and use that as an example to say that there are some places where whether it's privatization, whether it's charter schools, can be beneficial for students that are in a bad school district. The Democrats were more along the lines of that's a slippery slope. Creating that can hurt the children who are still in the public schools, that it's draining money from the public schools and already a cash-strapped state. And so it was kind of along the lines of where the debate's been in general, but it got all four candidates on the record on their position on that issue. Initiative 42 was another issue that kind of had gone along on party lines too, I think is what you were kind of talking about too, Emma.
Yeah, I mean, it was, well, they were, kind of divided on their stance on the initiative, but it's you know, the Democrats were very pro Initiative 42, and then the Republicans, I know Shane Aguirre said he wouldn't personally vote for it, but, you know, if it happens, it happens, it's the law. And then Mark Prince had said, he didn't say whether or not he would vote for it necessarily, but he had said, you know, I'm not in favor of the way it changes, or the way it's perceived to change the Constitution. So, so that was interesting to see for sure, just to see an argument against it, and, you know, one that I think a lot of people probably have at this point.
And it was interesting too, just on Mark Prince's point, was that he had said early in the forum, in a discussion about funding, that he liked the phase-in that Initiative 42 proposed, is taking the 25% of new growth revenue on using 6, 7, 8 years to get to that full funding. But then he also spoke, when asked specifically about the initiative, that he didn't like the constitutional change.
And while the education did focus, or the forum did focus on education, we also had some conversations about the state flag, as well as some other things. So really just a wide gamut of topics that were covered. But it was good, like Chris said, to get these candidates on the record about education, particularly in our district in Lee County, which has had such a clear stance on education in the past, and obviously will be a big topic in this race coming up. Anything else, Chris, you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, along those lines, I mean, I think all 4 candidates, you know, express the fact that they believe in the importance of a robust public education system, and particularly the importance it is here, looking at how to maintain that here, how to, you know, maybe there's some debate about what you need to look at statewide. They also talked about referring to resources in Tupelo and Lee County, teachers, superintendents, and you know, using their guidance and making decisions, which I'm sure a lot of people were glad to see if they live up to that.
And any other takeaways? Thing you want to mention?
I mean, you know, same things as you guys have said, but I just thought for them to have a specific forum and come out specifically to talk about education was a really good thing to see, because it means that that's something they're thinking about, or, you know, if they hadn't been, then they were last night. So.
Sure.
So it was good. It's good to see them out there.
Absolutely. And again, that August 4th primary election will have candidates, Democratic candidates Jim Newman and Charles Penson, as well as Republican Shane Aguirre and Mark Prince. So make sure you get out and vote. We have a full video of the forum available right now on djournal.com. There'll be a story in tomorrow's print edition, just on a general sort of stance on a number of issues on these candidates as well. So remember to continue watching our election coverage, not only on djournal.com, but in our print edition as well. So thank you for joining us, and come back soon. Thanks.